Many of you have seen problems like this before, and you remember that there was something that you needed to do, but you might not remember exactly how to accomplish it. So the first thing I want you to ask yourself is, what do parentheses do? Most of you are going to answer, well, parentheses mean to do it first, which you're right. They do mean to do it first, but they also mean times. If I had the problem written like this, 3 times 2, that means that I'm going to multiply the 3 and the 2, and I'm going to get 6. So we are going to use it as the do it first and the timesing at the same time. This is called the distributive property. Some of you have seen it as the Santa hat, some of you have seen it as taste the rainbow. There's lots of different things that teachers call it, but it's just multiplying in the distributive property. So what does it mean? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the 3 times the x. So I'm doing 3 times x. Now, a lot of you won't have to write this step, but I'm going to write it out so that you can see where I'm going. Then there is this plus sign here, so I'm going to write my plus sign, and then it's 3 times 4. Okay, well, I can simplify this. What is 3 times x? Well, 3 times x is just 3x. What is 3 times 4? 3 times 4 is 12. Can I add an x with a 12? No, they're not like terms. The 3 on the coefficient with the x will not combine with the 12 because there's no x here. So that means that, guess what? I am done. I have just multiplied my 3 times x plus 4. Negative 7 times the quantity x plus 5. What am I going to do? Well, parentheses mean do it first, but they also mean times. So I'm going to use the distributive property here. Negative 7 times x. Then I'm going to bring my plus sign down. Negative 7 times 5. Now I'm going to combine what I have here. Negative 7 times x is negative 7x. Okay, and then I have plus negative 7 times 5 is a negative 35. Now I can leave it like this, but hopefully some of you will realize that, oh, you're not really a fan of this double sign thing here. What is plus a negative the same as? Well, plus a negative is the same as minus 35. Okay, so either one of those answers is fine. I just like to have one sign. Some of you, I'm just going to give you a little side note here, some of you will just look at it, and when you do the second part right here, you'll say it is a negative 7 times a positive 5, and you'll go straight to that negative 35 without having the double signs. It's your choice. There are 2 ways that you can do the problem 2 times the quantity x minus 6. So I'll kind of keep them separate here. The first way is, instead of saying that it is x minus 6, I'm going to change this to x plus a negative 6. And that kind of helps me keep my sign straight. So what will I do? I'm going to multiply first 2 times x, which is just like that. Then I'm going to bring my plus sign down. Then I'm going to multiply 2 times a negative 6. When I combine those quantities, multiply them together, 2 times x is 2x. Then I have my plus. 2 times a negative 6 is negative 12. And then I don't like double signs like this. I know I used it in the problem so that I could get my sign correctly, and it does help me get it correct. But when I see plus a negative, that is the same thing as minus or subtract. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2x minus 12. The other way that you can do this problem, and I'm just going to rewrite it over here, is I can leave that sign there. Now, I find that the first way kids tend to get the sign correct more, but the second way is less writing, and I know how 9th graders are. They prefer less writing, so let's see how this one works out. 2 times x, again, is just 2x. I'm going to do it in one step here. Then I am going to say 2 times, and I just call it a negative 6. What is 2 times a negative 6? Well, it is negative 12. Well, sorry, I should have wrote that out. But anyway, it's negative 12. Negative 6 times the quantity x minus 7. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply negative 6 times x. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x. So I just kind of went vertically down on that first part of the problem. The next part of the problem, and you can do this a couple different ways. You can change this to plus a negative. Okay, so what I would do next is I would bring my plus sign down and I would say, what is a negative 6 times a negative 7? Well, negative 6 times negative 7 is a positive 42. So then I look here and I say, can I add a negative 6x plus a 42? Do they have like terms? Well, no, because this first one has an x and the second one doesn't. So my final answer is negative 6x plus 42. If you don't like changing the signs, you can do it this other way. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x, and I'm just going to do this in one step this time. Then what I do is I look at the next part as a negative 6 times a negative 7. Well, what is a negative times a negative? It is a positive. What is 6 times 7? It is 42. Again, can I combine a negative 6x and a 42? No, so my final answer is negative 6x plus 42. Either way you do it is fine. You do what you're comfortable with. X times the quantity x plus 2. I'm going to start, it's just like a distributive property. It's got those parentheses, so I'm going to say x times x. Then I'm going to bring down my plus sign and write x times 2. Now I'm going to combine them together. X times x, thinking back to our exponent rules, if you read problem number 5, it told you that x times x is x squared. Plus, what is x times 2? It is, and I'm going to write my coefficient first because that's how we normally do it, it is 2x. So the question is, can I combine an x squared with an x? You can't. An x squared, because it was x times x, is different than an x times 2. It's like saying we have two different variables. It could be a y and an x, but we cannot combine those together. So your final answer is x squared plus 2x. X times the quantity x minus 4. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to, when it has that minus there, I like to change it to plus a negative. You don't have to. I'll show you how to do it without it in a minute, but we're just going to kind of simplify our signs. So then we're going to do a regular distributive property. X times x, remember from problem 5, x times x, oh, we're having struggles here, is x squared. Bring down my plus. Now I'm going to say x times a negative 4. Okay, what is x times negative 4? And I'm going to write my coefficient first, so it would be negative 4x. Now, I don't like the double signs. You can use the double signs, and that is fine. But because I don't like them, I'm going to rewrite the problem as x squared minus 4x, because plus a negative is the opposite of what I did up here at the top, and I won't go back to that just plain old minus. So my final answer would be x squared minus 4x. Another way you could do it, if you don't like doing the double sign thing, here we go. We just say x times x, x squared, and then we say x times a negative 4. Well, x times a negative 4 is going to be a negative 4x, and there is my final answer. X times the quantity 5x plus 6. I'm going to start with x times 5x. Then I'm going to bring down my plus sign and write the x times 6. Now it's just a matter of simplifying. I always put my coefficients first, so when I combine this together, I'm going to start with 5, and then I know that x times x, we practiced this on the last few problems, is x squared, plus 6 times x is, once again, I put my coefficient first, so 6x. I cannot combine an x squared and an x, so that is my final answer. When I start this problem, since it has a subtract, the first thing I'm going to do is change the subtract to plus a negative. Don't worry, at the end I will teach you how to do it without doing that if that is more your style. Okay, I'm going to multiply 3x times x, then I'm going to bring my plus sign down, then I'm going to multiply 3x times a negative 4. Okay, now I'm going to combine 3 and then x times x is x squared plus 3 times a negative 4, oops, my plus didn't show up, is a negative 12, and then I just have that one x, so I'm going to put an x. Now, I've talked about this in some of the other videos. I'm going to cover it quickly. I don't like double signs. I know I used it to get the right sign, but now I'm going to basically undo it. What is the opposite of plus a negative? It is just subtract. So my final answer would be 3x squared minus 12x. What if you don't want to do it that way? If you want to just leave the minus sign there, or the subtract, you can. 3x times x is 3x squared. Then when you do the next part, you're saying 3x times a negative 4. Well, I know that a positive times a negative is a negative. 3 times 4 is 12, and then I just have that single x at the end, and that would be my final answer. I'm sure your first instinct when you see this problem is to quit because it must be too hard, but it's not. Let's just break it down. Okay, so first thing we have to notice is that negative 2x is going to be multiplied by what's in parentheses. This minus 4 out here at the end is just kind of extra. We don't need it yet, so we're just going to kind of ignore it for a few moments. So let's start with the beginning. Negative 2x times negative 3x. Let's start there and get that combined so we're not too overwhelmed. I'm going to bring that down, and what is a negative 2x times a negative 3x? So first, negative 2 times negative 3 is a positive 6. X times x is an x squared. Now we're going to go to the next part of the distributive property. There's the plus sign. Negative 2x times, a 6. Well, what is a negative 2 times that 6? It is negative 12, and then I just have that single x. I'm not done because this is where that minus 4 that we had comes in. I've got to put it down here at the end of the problem. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can simplify anything. I've got an x squared, I've got an x, and I have a plain old constant that doesn't have an x with it. So that means that none of those are going to be able to be combined. The only thing I can do to simplify this problem is get rid of the double signs, which I don't enjoy. So I'm going to do 6x squared minus 12x minus 4. Now I am going to do this again without writing out the first step for those of you who that confuses, so just stick with me for a moment. This might be simpler for some of you. Okay, let's start with the beginning. Negative 2 times negative 3 is 6. X times x is x squared. Now we're going to do the second part. Negative 2 times a positive 6 is going to be negative 12, and then I just have a single x, so I put my x. Now I tack on my minus 4 at the end. I stop at the end of the parentheses with the multiplying. I'm not going to multiply by that negative 4. Then I simply look at them and say an x squared, an x, and no variable. So I cannot combine any of those, so that is my final answer. Hey, hopefully it wasn't as hard as you thought it was.